So what's so important about the scroll's DNA?
Where they came from, we still don't know.
2,000 years ago, someone sealed jars of parchment deep inside desert caves, then vanished. For centuries, the scrolls lay silent, while empires rose and fell above them. Today, inside super clean labs with UV lights and airlocks, scientists are coaxing whispers from those ancient fragments. DNA strands from sheep and cattle are telling a story the ink never could, about rival sects, lost communities, and a hidden library that was never meant to survive. But the DNA revealed something else. Fragments that didn't belong at all. Outliers, genetic strangers, slipped into the collection. Which begs the question, who put them there? And why? Before we begin, hit like and subscribe to Stone and Bone. Because the final clue in this story may not just change how we see the ancient world, it may change how we see the roots of faith itself.
Collection of scrolls also contains treasure maps. Even if scholars still aren't 100% sure who wrote and compiled them.
When the jars were opened in 1947, scholars realized this was no accident. A Bedouin shepherd, chasing a lost goat, had hurled a stone into a cave and heard pottery shatter, the moment that led to one of the greatest archaeological finds of the 20th century. Inside those jars were more than 1,000 manuscripts, most shattered into fragments, yet still carrying the oldest surviving Hebrew Bible texts. Alongside them, hymns, laws, community rules, and writings no one had ever seen. They were created between the 3rd century BC and the 1st century AD, an age when Judaism fractured into sects, Greek culture pressed in, and Christianity was just beginning to stir. The scrolls weren't just relics. They were a snapshot of a faith in conflict, a world about to transform. There was one problem. Time had torn the scrolls apart. Instead of neat manuscripts, archaeologists faced over 25,000 scraps, some no larger than a fingernail. Scholars tried to rebuild them by hand, matching handwriting styles, dialects, and themes. It was like solving a puzzle, with most of the pieces missing. Useful, but never conclusive. And in the gaps, speculation grew. Did all these voices belong to Qumran alone? Or were outsiders' texts hidden among them, blurring the story of who these people really were? The breakthrough came when scientists stopped looking at the ink and turned to the parchment itself. Most scrolls weren't papyrus, but animal skins. And inside every skin, even 2,000 years later, is a ghost. Fragments of DNA. Extracting it wasn't easy. Ancient DNA is fragile, splintered into tiny pieces, and polluted with modern contamination from hands that touched the scrolls. So researchers worked in super clean labs in Sweden, sealed with airlocks and flooded with UV light, carefully lifting only dust or fibers from blank margins. Then they used a silica-based method that pulled DNA like a magnet, separating sheep, goat, and cow sequences into identifiable patterns. Suddenly, the scrolls weren't just texts. They were biological records of the animals, the herds, even the regions they came from. This isn't just archaeology. It's science rewriting sacred history, showing us not only what the texts say, but where they truly came from, and what those origins reveal could reshape everything we know about Judaism, Christianity, and the world they were born into. The first genetic results dropped like a thunderclap. Out of 26 fragments, 24 were written on sheep parchment, but 2 fragments, both from the book of Jeremiah, were cowhide.
After the beginning of this research, we all thought that the majority or the scrolls were written on goat skin. But 2 results tell us that it's a cowhide.
That might sound trivial, but in the desert around Qumran, it was impossible. Sheep and goats thrived on sparse scrub. Cows required water, and pasture land that simply didn't exist here. Archaeological surveys confirmed cattle were never raised in this region, which meant these cowhide scrolls were imports. likely from the fertile Jordan Valley, where herds of cattle grazed in abundance. And with that revelation, the old idea of Qumran as a sealed-off sect collapsed. It wasn't a monastery. It was a hub, a crossroads of ideas. But if manuscripts were carried here from outside, another question looms. Who decided which texts were worthy of being hidden in the caves, and which were left behind? The DNA made something clear. Qumran wasn't just a monastic retreat. It looked more like an archive. Different scrolls, different origins, gathered together in one desert library. To test this further, researchers dug deeper into the sheep DNA. Sheep pass on distinct genetic signatures called haplogroups, maternal lineages labeled A, B, C, D, and E. These markers act like barcodes, allowing scientists to trace parchment back to specific flocks. Fragments from the same flock meant a single community of scribes. Fragments from different haplogroups meant outsiders were involved, and what emerged was striking. Some texts were clearly local, tied to the sheep of Qumran. Others pointed to distant herds, proof that the scrolls came from across Judea. The caves were no longer the symbol of a single sect. They were an intellectual crossroads, a gathering place of ideas. One text put this theory to the ultimate test: the Songs of the Sabbath Sacrifice. Multiple copies were found in the Qumran caves, and another surfaced 50 kilometers, about 30 miles, away, at the fortress of Masada. Were Masada's rebels reading a Qumran import, or had they created their own copy? The DNA gave the verdict. The Qumran copies all came from sheep belonging to haplogroup B, the same local flock. But the Masada fragment told a different story. It was written on parchment from haplogroup a genetically distinct line of sheep. That proved Masada's scroll wasn't carried from Qumran. It was independently produced. The Songs of the Sabbath Sacrifice wasn't exclusive property. It was a shared text circulating across Jewish communities. And with that revelation, the image of Qumran as a lone voice in the wilderness shattered. Instead, it was part of a larger, vibrant conversation happening across Judea. Not every scroll in the Qumran collection truly came from Qumran. Many fragments surfaced not through controlled digs, but through the hands of antiquities dealers in the mid-20th century. That murky trade blurred origins, and DNA exposed it. Take Fragment 4, Q344. A simple debt note, nothing like the sacred hymns and prophecies around it. Scholars were uneasy about it for decades. DNA confirmed it. The parchment came from a sheep unrelated to Qumran's flock. It didn't belong in those caves. Another case, a fragment of Isaiah. Revered, yes, but its genetic fingerprint was also an outlier, tied to flocks from far away. Some fragments were misplaced, others misattributed, but the more chilling possibility remains. Were some scrolls deliberately planted, slipped into the collection to rewrite Qumran's story itself? Why were the genuine scrolls hidden at all? One theory points to 70 AD, when Roman legions stormed Jerusalem and destroyed the temple. Communities may have rushed their most precious writings into caves before they were burned or seized. Another view suggests deliberate secrecy, a vault for mystical works not meant for outsiders, maybe not even for their own time. Were these scrolls an emergency archive, or a message for a future generation? Every jar sealed in those cliffs carries the same unspoken riddle. Were these words hidden to protect them, or to protect us from them? The mystery didn't stop in antiquity. After their discovery, the scrolls fell under the control of a small circle of scholars. For decades, only a handful could see them, while the wider world waited. That secrecy fueled suspicion. Some whispered that the Vatican was blocking dangerous revelations. Others believed the scrolls contained prophecies that could shake faith itself. What's certain is that access was tightly guarded, and knowledge, once again, became a form of power. Only in recent decades, with digital archives and genetic science, have these ancient voices been freed from silence. DNA cracked open one layer of truth, but it wasn't the only breakthrough. Multispectral cameras scanned fragments under UV and infrared light, exposing faded ink invisible to the eye. Entire lines of text, thought lost forever. Artificial intelligence now compares handwriting styles, testing millions of fragment pairings in seconds. What once took decades of painstaking guesswork can now be solved in hours. Together with genetics, these tools are turning scraps of parchment into complete works again. But every advance brings new puzzles. Sometimes scans reveal words that don't match known traditions, raising the question, were hidden teachings deliberately buried among the scrolls? The evidence is clear. Qumran wasn't an island. Some scrolls came from local scribes, others from distant herds and far-off communities. Sheep haplogroups A and B, distinct and unrelated, prove different flocks, different origins. This mosaic reflects a world alive with debate. Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, rebels at Masada, each leaving their remark. Judaism in this period was not one voice, but many. And from that clash of visions, Christianity would emerge. This isn't just archaeology. It rewrites what we know about the roots of two of the world's great religions, and about how knowledge itself survives in times of upheaval. Even now, the Dead Sea Scrolls guard their secrets. Outlier fragments prove some were intruders. Others hint at libraries still buried in caves never touched by modern hands. And the deeper question remains, why were these texts sealed away at all? To preserve them, or to keep us from them? And if intruders could already find their way into the collection we know, what else has been hidden? Prophecies, forbidden teachings, entire books that could shake the foundations of faith? One thing is certain, the scrolls are not relics of a single sect. They are a mirror of a fractured, searching world. And as science advances, each fragment still has the power to rewrite history. If this journey into ancient secrecy intrigued you, give this video a like, share it with others who love forbidden history, and subscribe to Stone and Bone. Because the next discovery waiting in the desert may not just change what we know about the past. It may change how we see ourselves.